Hello, my friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is David, and we're back for another weekly wrap up where I'm going to talk about what I've been reading and what games I've been playing this last week. So, I have finished in the past 7 days, 6 days, because I'm filming this Saturday instead of Sunday. I have finished 4 titles: one novella, a short story collection, and 2 novels. Now, granted, one of those was an audiobook. 2 of those were audiobooks. One I had been chipping away at for about 2 weeks, and then the other one being a novella. But still, I have a lot that I'm going to be wrapping up. So I'm going to just kind of go. I'm going to start with the 4 that I've finished, from my least impressed by to my favorite of the 4. So my in number 4 from that is the Science Fiction Carnival. This is a collection of humorous science fiction short stories, and the word humorous is I would use very loosely on this. Some of them are funny. In particular, the standout one is about 2 pages long, and it made me absolutely laugh at the very end of it. How it ended, the story itself. It's one Michael K. Vaughan would appreciate. And we'll see. Maybe at the end of this video, I'll conclude by reading that story in its entirety. We'll see how my voice is holding up by the end of this. But as a whole, I mean, a lot of these were forgettable, unremarkable. This is the worst luck that I've had so far with a vintage science fiction book, even the short story collections. So I'm not discouraged by any means. There were still some good ones in here. The last story was about a writer that wanted to be a science fiction writer, particularly inventive, even if it lost some of the early momentum. I thought it was going to be absolutely wonderful. And then the middle of it came around, and I'm just like, it's doing things I'm not enjoying as much. But, I mean, as a whole, I'm glad I read it. Yeah, it is what it is. I'm glad I read it. So the second one I can't hold up because it was a novella. I listened to A Psalm for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. So Becky Chambers fans, and you know who you are. There are some of you that preach at the Church of Becky Chambers, and I do know I need to get to a long way to a small angry planet. This is the second novella by Becky Chambers that I have listened to in the last couple months. I think the first one was called To Be Taught If Fortunate or something like that, which was mediocre at best. Was definitely not my kind of thing. Was very slice of life, not really any kind of plot, just following along with some characters as they're going about their daily tasks. A Psalm for the Wild Built I enjoyed a lot more than that. It's about a tea monk who meets a robot. Robots, a couple hundred years before this takes place, basically left humankind and said, hey, we're going to go off into the wilderness. We're going to make our own colony. Don't try to follow us. Don't try to stop us. And they came to an agreement. And so humankind and the couple hundred years since they left have had to find ways to make do because they were so dependent on robots to do everything. So they had to find ways to become self-sufficient without the robots, without making more robots. So interesting nuance. So this is kind of an interaction between this tea monk and a robot, and how they come together and interact, and what they learn from each other. And it was fine. I'm starting to wonder if I'm going to enjoy her big series, because she's not blowing me away yet. I'm not a big fan yet, and it might just be that these are novellas. I mean, I was blown away by and really enjoyed All Systems Red by Martha Wells, the first of the Murderbot diaries. Becky Chambers is 0 for 2 on blowing me away with novellas. They've been fine. So I'm concerned. I should have actually put this one before the Becky Chambers. Sorry for that. This is my real number 3. So the Psalm for the Wild Bill would be my number 2 for what I finished. We have Last Light of the Sun by Gavriel K. And I should have talked about this the last 2 reads videos because I've been listening to this on audiobook, and each time I've forgotten to grab it and talk about it. And there's probably a reason for that. When I downloaded the audiobook, I found out that I had actually downloaded it before and had gotten through part 1. I thought there was a mistake, and then so I started back at the beginning, and it came back to me pretty quickly. Yes, I had read or had listened to part 1 of this years before and had stopped after the end of that part 1, and I think there was a reason for that. What kept me going through is in part 2, we finally get the figure that I knew was coming, King Alfred, and that's what drew me to this. Jennifer Brooks had mentioned this was, King Alfred, and that's one of my favorite historical figures. It's one of my favorite historical periods and conflicts of the last of the defenders holding off on England before it was united against Viking raiders, and I was very, very disappointed in this one. It was fine. Fine sums it up. I'm not going to hang on to it. I'm still going to give Gavriel K a second shot because so many people sing his praises. I'll probably give Tigana or something a try. If you have a recommendation on one that hopefully will win me over better than this, leave a comment down below. But ultimately, when it came to King Alfred, he wasn't a major figure in this. It was had a lot of walking between the Fae and all of that having a big impact. If I was given a choice between reading this or reading one of the Saxon Tales by Bernard Cornwell, I would grab any one of the volumes of the Saxon Tales over this. They do a much better job. So this was disappointing. This is one that should have been a hit for me, and it fell flat. And I'm very disappointed in that because I wanted to like Gavriel K. And I think my expectations going into it are probably what was the issue more than anything, because I was expecting to like Gavriel K. from everything I had ever heard about him. I was expecting this to be about Alfred and that big conflict, and it was like the in the background scene of the story. It wasn't even a major part of the tale being told here. And so I think that set me up for disappointment as well. But I did have a 5-star read that I finished. This is one that I had started very few chapters of last month, and with my busy space opera September reading schedule, just could never get it prioritized, and I had never gotten to the point where it hooked me yet. And that's because the chapter I had stopped before, that very next chapter I was supposed to read, is when we get the big player in the book. And this book is Legend by David Gemmell. And the character is Druss, the legend. And holy smokes, friends. This is a good book. Wow. This was the story I needed. I couldn't put it down the last couple days. It really has blown me away. Much like Michael K. Vaughan, who finished this recently and made a video about it. I am instantly a fan of David Gemmell, and I want to read more of his stuff. I will be doing a full review for this one, not for any of the other 3 that I've talked about, but I will be reviewing this one in full. It's good. James, thank you for singing the praises of David Gemmell for the last couple months, because I'm very happy that I picked that up, and that I read it, and I'm sad that it took me so long to get through it, because, by God, it's good. It's a really good story. So the couple of books that I'm still in the middle of. So on my phone, I'm still reading through Inhibitor Phase by Alastair Reynolds. I'm almost halfway through it, and it's getting really, really good. It's going to be just another really rock solid space opera science fiction book, and I'm absolutely enjoying it. In fact, last night after I finished Legend and finished Science Fiction Carnival, which I was close to the end of both of those, I spent the rest of my time just reading Inhibitor Phase because I was enjoying it that much. And I'll probably read even more of it today. I'm working my way through Idylls of the King, which those of you that join me on Poetry Thursdays know that I'm working through reading all of the Holy Grail for all of you on Thursdays. So I've got 2 more weeks of that. And right now I'm getting ready to dive into Marriage of Garant. So I'm thoroughly enjoying this. This is a reread for me. I knew I had enjoyed it the last time, but I think I'm enjoying it even more now. It's good stuff. I'm in the middle. This buddy read still is going for SPQR by Mary Beard. Vin from Revenant Reads, Carrie from Very Literary Carrie, and some others are reading through this right now. Mark from Book Time with Elvis. We're about at the halfway point because there's a whole bunch of extras at the end. So this goes to about 550 pages, 530. I'm at the got to move this. Sorry, I am at about the 250 mark. Yeah, 254. Enjoying this a lot. This is good stuff, and it's fitting because it's going really well with my current read along with John from Hey Y'all Listen Up through some Julius Caesar. I've started in on Civil War. I'm going to make a little more progress on this today before I get to Idylls of the King or Inhibitor Phase, whatever I decide to pick up. But I'm really enjoying Julius Caesar's writing. So that's what I've been reading this last week. The game that has been an off week for game playing, and that's okay because the week before my week off, I got a lot of games in. But last night, played Mombasa with my wife. This is in my top 25. Absolutely enjoyed it, even though I got completely obliterated. And we're going to have a rematch tonight, hopefully. And I'm going to try to do better. For reading, I'm going to be reading. I just downloaded the audiobook for City of Brass. So that was my spin for my Discord picks. And if you missed that, I'll have the video linked down below. But on my slaying of the TBR monster, I openly invited all of you to give me one book to add onto this wheel. And so every time I get my next 5, one of those 5s will be a book off that spin until I get through them all. And some of you have taken full advantage of that. I'm looking forward to City of Brass. I think it should be good. I'm a little sad that it's a series. I have enough series that I'm in the middle of, but I'm looking forward to it. The book I think I'm going to pick up next from that, the 5, I think I'm going to pick up Graveyard for Lunatics because it's the right month for it. It's yeah. So I mean, it says in A Graveyard for Lunatics, Bradbury draws on his intimate first-hand experience of Hollywood in the 1950s to create an unforgettable novel of the wonder, mystery, and magic that have become the Bradbury trademark. I mean, I want to read this, but at the same time, I really want to read this. We'll see which one I end up picking up and starting to read. I'll pick one of those, and then I'll probably start chipping away at Travels of Sir John Mandeville. and see how I make some progress on those, which will leave the Greeks and whichever one of those two books that I choose not to pick up first, as the others from my next 5 that I want to get to. And I'm excited. Once I get started on all 5 of those from that 5, and some of them won't be coming in there until I get done with this or get through Civil War by Julius Caesar. I'm kind of trying to pace myself on what I'm picking up and when, and that's just starting all of them now. But once I do get started on all 5 of them, I will do my next 5 announcement. So I'm already starting to think ahead of what I'm going to be putting onto that list. And then I have a small book haul. So Steve Donahue recently did a book haul from Goodwill because he didn't want to get canceled. And I was out this morning, and I had planned on stopping at Half Price Books to look for some poetry books because I realized I don't have enough poetry books on my shelf. And that's going to... It's not like I'm running out of things for Poetry Thursdays by any means. But I want to start reading even more poetry because I'm very much in a poetry mood right now. I want to start reading. I want to start writing some poetry. A lot of people are going to be doing NaNoWriMo, including Steve Donahue. I'm probably not, but I may try to put together a long-form poem over the course of that month. And we'll see if that comes about or not. Because I do enjoy reading and writing those longer poems and that have a set structure and flow and meter and all of those things. So, but anyway, I stopped by Goodwill to see if they had some poetry books, and they did actually have some poetry books, along with a couple others that I'm going to share with you. So I got my book haul to prevent myself from getting canceled, just like Steve Donahue. I'd hate for you to all cancel me just because I didn't go to Goodwill and buy some books. So the one I'm least excited about in this, but because of the author, I picked up Thomas Hardy's selected poems, or selected poetry. I haven't read any Thomas Hardy. I haven't read any of his poetry, but I know the author. And, at Goodwill, for the price that they want, I mean, it just, why not? Then I found a 3rd edition Norton Introduction to Poetry. I figured this would be a good one to kind of compare and see how the selected poems that are put into this anthology stack up to the Harold Bloom one that I have, and to get a companion to counter that. I mean, there's a good number of Dickinson in here. There's some Donne. There's Frost. There's Hardy. There's a little bit of Spencer. Just a little bit of Spencer. I mean, there's a lot of poems in here. 500 and some pages of poetry. So I'm excited for that. But the one I'm really excited about, and the one I'm probably going to pick up and start reading soon, it's probably in my next 5 after this current 5. It is English Romantic Poetry, an anthology. This is a Dover Thrift edition, so it's not going to be a long-lasting edition, but it's good for now. And if you don't know already, I'll just come out and say it. My favorite poets, my favorite poetic movement of all. If I could have just one movement to keep on my collection and read only that, it would be the Romantics, Wordsworth and Coleridge and Keats. They're so great, and so I'm very, very excited for this anthology. And then, unexpected to me, I picked up a couple other books while I was there because the price is right, and Michael K. Vaughan is as big of an influencer as Steve Donahue. So we have H.P. Lovecraft at the Mountains of Madness and Other Stories of Terror, Tales of Terror. H.P. Lovecraft, the dreams in the witch house, and other weird stories. And the best of H.P. Lovecraft, blood-curdling tales of horror and the macabre. So, Lovecraft isn't necessarily my jam, but I have read some and have enjoyed some of his stories, and so I figured this would be a good trifecta to get him onto my shelf so that I can eventually get back to reading him. So, to finish things up, we will open to the story, as I had mentioned. So this story is The Swordsman of Varnish by Clive Jackson. And this is the highlight of this book. So you will experience the best of what this has to offer. The twin moons brooded over the red deserts of Mars and the ruined city of Kualoenis. The night wind sighed around the fragile spires and whispered at the fretted latticed windows of the empty temples, and the red dust made it like a city of copper. It was close to midnight when the distant rumble of racing hooves reached the city, and soon the riders thundered in under the ancient gateway. Tharn, warrior lord of Lonis, leading his pursuers by a scant 20 yards, realized wearily that his lead was shortening, and raked the scaly flanks of his six-legged Vorkal with cruel spurs. The faithful beast gave a low cry of despair as it tried to obey and failed. In front of Tharn, in the big double saddle, sat Lenai Tal Loannis, royal lady of Mars, riding the ungainly animal with easy grace, leaning forward along its arching neck to murmur swift words of encouragement into its flattened ears. Then she lay back against the Tharn's mailed chest and turned her lovely face up to his, flushed and vivid with the excitement of the chase, amber eyes aflame with love for her strange hero from beyond time and space. "We shall win this race yet, my Tharn," she cried. "Wonder through that archway lies the temple of the living vapor, and once there we can defy all the hordes of Varnish." Looking down at the unearthly beauty of her, at the subtle curve of throat and breast and thigh, revealed as the wind tore at her scanty garments, Tharn knew that even if the swordsman of Varnish struck him down in this strange odyssey, would not have been in vain. But the girl had judged the distance correctly, and Tharn brought their snorting Vorkal to a sliding, rearing halt at the great doors of the temple, just as the swordsmen reached the outer archway and jammed there in a struggling, cursing mass. In seconds, they had sorted themselves out and came streaming across the courtyard, but the delay had given Tharn time to dismount and take his stand in one of the great doorways. He knew that if he could hold it for a few moments while Lenai Tal Loannis got the door open, then the secret of the living vapor would be theirs, and with it the mastery of all lands of Loannis. The swordsman tried first to ride him down, but the door was so narrow and deep that Tharn had only to drive his sword point upward into the first Vorkal's throat and leap backward as the dying beast fell. Its rider was stunned by the fall, and Tharn bounded up onto the dead animal and beheaded the unfortunate swordsman without compunction. There were 10 of his enemies left, and they came at him now on foot, but the confining doorway prevented them from attacking more than 4 abreast, and Tharn's elevated position upon the huge carcass gave him the advantage he needed. The fire of battle was in his veins now, and he bared his teeth and laughed in their faces, and his reddened sword wove a pattern of cold death which none could pass. Lenai Tal Loannis, running quick, cool fingers over the pitted bronze of the door, found the radiation lock and pressed her glowing opalescent thumb ring into the socket, and gave a little sob of relief as she heard hidden tumblers falling. With agonizing slowness, the ancient mechanism began to open the door. Soon Tharn heard the girl's clear voice call from above the clashing steel, "Inside, my Tharn, the secret of the living vapor is ours." But Tharn, with 4 of his foes dead now and 7 to go, could not retreat from his position on top of the dead Vorkal without grave risk of being cut down, and Lenai Tal Loannis, quickly realizing this, sprang up beside him, drawing her own slim blade and crying, "Allah, my love, I will be your left arm." Now the cold hand of defeat gripped the hearts of the swordmen of Varnish. 2, 3, 4 more of them mingled their blood with the red dust of the courtyard as Tharn and his fighting princess swung their merciless blades in perfect unison. It seemed that nothing could prevent them now from winning the mysterious secret of the living vapor, but they reckoned without the treachery of one of the remaining swordsmen. Leaping backward out of the conflict, he flung his sword on the ground in disgust. "Ah, the hell with it," he grunted, and unclipping a proton gun from his belt, he blasted Lenai Taluanis and her warrior lord out of existence with a searing energy beam. And that, my friends, is the best of the stories in that collection. Michael, I hope you enjoyed that one. It made me think of you with John Carter of Mars. So thank you for watching, and stay tuned for Tuesday, where I'll be reviewing Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett.